Employers in the United States are quietly rewriting the bottom rung of the career ladder. Job postings that once trained novices now ask for verified competence with artificial intelligence tools, cloud platforms, and production workflows. The signal is not subtle. Analyses of recent postings show a shrinking share of roles open to candidates with fewer than 3 years of experience in precisely the occupations most exposed to large language models, while demand holds or rises for senior talent. The entry point that once paid for learning on the job is narrowing, and it is narrowing fastest where software and data do the work of the former junior employee. Rewinding clarifies the arc. In the early 1980s, the dominant corporate computer was a mainframe, and entry work meant clerical processing, data entry, and routine accounting tasks. By the early 2000s, the browser and enterprise resource planning systems had standardized back-office work and pushed routine tasks toward call centers and shared services, often offshore. By the early 2020s, cloud computing, machine learning, and automation suites allowed firms to codify whole workflows, not just tasks, and to scale them across teams. The result is a decades-long substitution of process and software for repetition, with successive waves, globalization, digitization, and now generative models, reducing the number of roles designed for learning by doing. The World Economic Forum's 2025 Outlook lists artificial intelligence and big data, networks and cybersecurity, and general technological literacy as the fastest-growing skill domains for workers, a list that tracks squarely with functions where entry-level exposure used to be abundant. A second rewind point sits in labor supply. The Bureau of Labor Statistics shows that prime age participation climbed back to the high 80s on a percentage basis in 2025, near multi-decade highs. That recovery matters because it restores pressure on employers to prioritize productivity per worker over headcount growth. When participation returns, the cheapest path to output is not hiring more trainees, but equipping existing teams with tools that extend capacity. The prime age participation rate near the mid-80s underscores that firms are operating in a tight labor market while still facing cost discipline, a combination that predictably accelerates automation at the margin. The wage baseline also shifted. Real average hourly earnings grew over the past year, modestly but definitively, after a period of inflation-adjusted declines. The Department of Labor and the Bureau of Labor Statistics reported gains in real weekly earnings between late 2024 and late 2025. Incremental real wage growth, combined with the return of participation, raises the cost of entry-level training time for employers, which further incentivizes tools and experienced hires who can be productive immediately. The causal story begins with technology economics. Cloud infrastructure from Amazon Web Services, Microsoft Azure, and Google Cloud allows teams to build and deploy internal software with far lower fixed costs than in prior decades. That stack increasingly includes managed databases, serverless compute, workflow engines, and vector search. On top of it, large language models and code assistants automate documentation, first drafts, test scaffolding, and data transformation scripts, the precise learning tasks that once justified an entry analyst or junior developer. When the experimentation cost of software falls and the marginal cost of model-assisted drafts approaches zero, organizations rationally shift routine work from trainees to tools and concentrate human time on supervision and integration. The McKinsey Global Institute estimates that by the end of this decade, activities accounting for up to roughly 1/3 of hours worked in the United States could be automated or partly automated, with generative models accelerating adoption in office support, customer service, and food service, sectors that historically trained millions. Capital allocation reinforces the trend. Venture investors in software favor products that remove operational friction for customers, and enterprise buyers reward tools that compress cycle times. From robotic process automation to customer support co-pilots, the sales pitch is consistent. Eliminate queues, shorten approvals, stabilize quality, and redeploy people. As those products mature, managers restructure jobs around exception handling and cross-functional judgment rather than repetitive production. That redesign naturally shifts the modal job posting away from entry criteria and toward demonstrated experience with platforms such as Salesforce, ServiceNow, Databricks, or Snowflake, along with proficiency in prompt-driven workflows anchored by OpenAI, Anthropic, or fine-tuned open models. External surveys and employer interviews capture the same theme in softer language, describing artificial intelligence literacy as a differentiator for candidates across non-technical roles in marketing, operations, and administration. Employers also learned something during the pandemic shock. Distributed workforce organizations to document processes, instrument performance, and tighten handoffs. When offices reopened, the documentation and the metrics remained, making it easier to slot software into standardized steps and to compare tool-assisted output with human baselines. Reports on entry-level postings since the pandemic show the sharpest declines in high artificial intelligence exposure roles such as software development, data analysis, and consulting, even as the total demand for those occupations remains resilient. The core work persists. The apprenticeship scaffolding is what gets compressed. Education finance adds pressure from the supply side. A generation of graduates arrives carrying debt and confronting fewer paid apprenticeships. Employers, facing higher wage floors and rising benefit costs, consolidate the training function into shorter, tool-centric onboarding and rely on certificate signals from cloud providers and platform academies. The World Economic Forum's skills lists and employer surveys this year echo the same point. General technology fluency and the ability to use artificial intelligence tools are no longer optional for non-technical roles. They are the table stakes that justify a first offer. The human consequences diverge by sector and credential. Highly codified white-collar functions, such as basic financial analysis, paralegal document review, and entry-level software maintenance, now offload first drafts to systems, leaving fewer seats for novices. In contrast, fields that require in-person care, skilled trades, and advanced scientific work continue to add jobs, fueled by demographics and investment cycles. Monthly data through this year shows healthcare, transportation and warehousing, and retail continuing to add employment, while office support roles structurally lag. At the same time, prime age participation near historic highs suggests that competition for mid-career roles stays intense, which raises the bar for lateral moves by early career workers who missed the initial apprenticeship step. Geography matters. Large metropolitan labor markets with dense employer networks and venture ecosystems, Seattle, the Bay Area, Austin, Boston, are better positioned to absorb displaced entry workers through contractor ecosystems, boot camps, and rotational programs. Smaller labor markets reliant on a narrow base of back-office employers face a steeper climb because the regional mix of firms offers fewer alternative ladders. This regional divergence is amplified by platform concentration. When core corporate tools consolidate around a small set of vendors, Amazon Web Services for infrastructure, NVIDIA for accelerated computing, Microsoft for enterprise productivity, and a handful of model providers for language systems, training pipelines tend to centralize in those vendors' partner networks, which cluster in larger cities. There are wage implications. Real wage gains over the past year are welcome after inflation's bite, but they coexist with the disappearance of lower-rung roles that historically paid less in exchange for learning over time. That shift can widen within occupation dispersion. Senior contributors command premia because they integrate tools and judgment, while inexperienced candidates struggle to clear the new baseline. International bodies expect wages to normalize without reigniting broad inflation, but the distributional question remains domestic and sector-specific. The point is not collapsing pay, it is a reweighting of who earns it. The education response is uneven. Traditional degrees still signal general ability, but platform certificates, employer-backed academies, and apprenticeship programs aligned to specific tool chains are moving closer to the point of hire. The limiting factor is not interest from workers, but institutional capacity and employer clarity. Corporate surveys this year report nearly universal investment in artificial intelligence pilots, but only a very small share of firms describe their capabilities as mature. That gap shows up as fragmented training, inconsistent standards, and cautious deployment, all of which slow the creation of stable entry-level tracks configured for a tool-dense workplace. Policy enters through 3 channels: data, mobility, and safety nets. Accurate, timely labor market data on tasks, not just occupations, helps community colleges and workforce boards align curricula with actual postings. Mobility programs that finance mid-career transitions, including portable benefits and subsidized upskilling tied to high-demand certificates, can offset the loss of early apprenticeships, and safety nets that support geographic moves, short training sabbaticals, and career breaks matter more when entry roles vanish and re-entry depends on targeted credentials. The Bureau of Labor Statistics' long-horizon participation tables already embed these demographic and educational dynamics. The projections are a reminder that participation and skills move together over decades, not months. For companies, the practical path is clear. Document work as processes, not tasks. Invest in internal academies that teach tool-based workflows and pair them with supervised production in live teams. Reserve a defined share of capacity for apprentices who can contribute immediately through instrumented, model-assisted steps. The economic case is straightforward. Apprentice time produces value when the unit of work is constructed so that models do the first pass and novices add structure, context, and checks. That is a better match for contemporary systems than the older model of shadowing a senior analyst for months to learn by repetition. For workers at the beginning, the signal is equally clear. Degrees still matter, but named proficiencies matter more quickly. Prompt-driven analysis with enterprise models, data cleaning in modern notebooks, dashboard publishing on standard business intelligence stacks, and basic workflow automation with sanctioned tools. Employers state this directly when they list artificial intelligence literacy and platform familiarity among preferred qualifications for non-technical roles. The hiring language has shifted from conceptual enthusiasm to operational fluency. The next decade's outlook is specific rather than abstract. The McKinsey Global Institute's scenarios place a meaningful share of hours at risk of automation by the end of this decade, with the steepest declines concentrated in office support and customer service. At the same time, healthcare, advanced manufacturing, clean energy deployment, and logistics build headcount, and software augments rather than eliminates the core creative and scientific tasks that define high-value work. The implication for entry-level design is that apprenticeship must migrate into those growing domains and be rebuilt around systems, not silence. The closing facts are calm. Prime age participation is high, real wages have turned positive, employers still add jobs in care and commerce, yet the ladder looks different. The first rung is no longer clerical repetition within an office. It is supervised production inside software-defined workflows. Think tanks, universities, and agencies converge on the same prescription: align training to tasks, publish skill taxonomies, finance timely transitions, and measure not just jobs, but the composition of work. In that world, adaptation is practical. Work shifts from learning the steps to orchestrating the system, and resilience comes from being able to prove that orchestration on day one.